So today I wanted to tell you the story of something that's on this bima that you may have noticed over the last year, this Shtender here. So I want to tell the story of how I got this Shtender and a little bit related to the words I want to say today. So first, I got this Shtender, which is Shtender is a Yiddish word for stand. Yeah, you put up your books there. And I was studying in Israel, I was studying in Jerusalem, it was 2002, and I had just been admitted to the Jewish Theological Seminary, to rabbinical school. And there was a store in Mea Shearim called Olive. I don't know if anyone's ever been to it, but this is what they sell in Olive. They sell wooden Judaica, and they're famous for their Shtenders. And everyone had this Shtender. So of course, I wanted to have the Shtender going into rabbinical school. It was the cool thing to do. So I walk in, and it's this little basement store in Mea Shearim, and there's this one woman working there. There's a line out the door. You wait, and you get in line. And the interesting thing about this Shtender is that you can write she personalizes it for you. She'll write your Hebrew name, and then a verse from the Torah. Whatever verse you want from the Torah, Talmud, Torah, whatever, she puts it on. So I wait in line, and for those Harry Potter fans out here, this is it's like the same energy as the wand store, but the owner was much less excited than the wand salesman. Let's just say that. She said, "What's your name and verse?" So I told her my name, and she quickly wrote it in this perfect Hebrew calligraphy. And then she said, "Verse," she tersely asked. And I quoted her Numbers 12:3. Va'ish Moshe anav me'od mikol ha'adam asher al pnei ha'adama. Now Moses himself was very humble, more so than any other human being on earth. She looked at me with this puzzled look, and she said, "No one's ever asked me to write that verse before." But that didn't stop her from writing the verse and then saying 150 shekels, please. So she did it, no questions asked. She didn't ask me why did I choose that line that no one else had chosen. I chose that line because I thought to myself, although I have no idea what it's going to be like to be a rabbinical student, and even less idea about what it's like to be a rabbi, I do know one thing. It will require anavut, humility. Now, it seems counterintuitive. People look up to leaders to tell them where to go, to tell them that everything is going to be okay if you just follow the plan. Humility, as we understand it, according to the Oxford Dictionary, is defined as having a low self-regard and sense of unworthiness. Now, why think about America? That is not the qualities that we look for in our presidents and our leaders. Why would anyone followers want their leaders to have humility? And that's what I want to talk about today. Why it's important, not just for leaders, but as a midah, sacred value for all of us, and how having too much humility is just as dangerous as having none at all. We're introduced to these words last week in Parashat Lecha. Immediately before Moses is called the humblest man on the face of the earth, there's a story of Moses giving up his power to 72 elders in the community, that it's too much for him to bear, and he delegates, and they prophesize. And two of those elders, Eldad and Medad, they start prophesying outside of the camp. Joshua, who will become the new Moses, may not know yet, and he says to Moses, a youth ran out and told Moses, saying, Eldad and Medad are acting the prophet in the camp. And Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' attendant from his youth, spoke up and said, my Lord, restrain them. But Moses said to him, are you wrought up on my account? Would that all the Lord's people were prophets, that the Lord put God's Spirit upon them. Very interesting. We see here Moses saying, let them speak. It's okay. And immediately afterward, the very next verse, story, talks about Moses' leadership being challenged again, but this time by his sister and his brother, by Miriam and Aaron. And this, after he is challenged, this is when we read about his greatest quality, the most humble person on the face of the earth. Humility, anavut, means that one must engage in what's called tzimtzum in Hebrew, which means withdrawal. In other words, don't be scared to let others take up space. Rabbi Max Wise wrote about Moses' humility. He said, Moses' humility is based on his recognition that he lives his life among and with his people, not at the center and not above them. His humility flows from his knowledge of his proper place in the world. This awareness allows him both to lead and to follow, to be in front and to be behind, to know his power and to know his limits. Moses is humble. He possesses anavah. He is not self-abasing, nor does his power lead to arrogance. So consequently, when the leader has something to say, now that they've let others take up space, now they can take up the space with even more authority and authenticity than before. This is also leadership. Leadership is a dance between a leader and their followers. And in this week's Parsha, we read yet another struggle of leadership. Last week, Eldad and Medad, Miriam and Aaron. This week, we see Moses versus the 10 spies. Moses sends out 12 spies to tour out the land of Canaan and give a report to come back. And 10 of the spies come back with a frightening report. They said we were like grasshoppers in front of them. There were giants there. They come back with giant grapes. For those who know, you see the pictures of the giant grapes. That's where it comes from. And the whole community, the Torah says, broke into loud cries. And the people wept that night. All the Israelites rallied against Moses and Aaron. They said, if only we had died in the land of Egypt. The whole community shouted at them. Or if only we might die in the wilderness, why is the Lord taking us to that land to fall by the sword? Our wives and our children will be carried off. It would be better for us to go back to Egypt. And they said to one another, this is a quote from the Torah, let's head back to Egypt. Then the Torah says, then Moses and Aaron fell on their faces before all the assembled congregation of the Israelites. It's interesting. Their reaction is not to yell back. Their reaction was to bow before this rebellion in silence. And I asked myself, why do they not say one word? There's a teaching in the Talmud that gives us kind of a roundabout answer as to why. There's the famous Chavruta, the Hillel and Shammai, and their two academies that argued with each other over everything. Hillel won most of the arguments, but the question is why? Now, the Talmud gives us a hint as to the reason in two places. One is in the Jerusalem Talmud, Sukkah 2:4, and the Babylonian Talmud, Eruvin 13b. The Talmud asks, why is Jewish law generally decided according to the house of Hillel, not according to the Shammai? Even though both were brilliant and deeply committed. The answer lies not in the intellect, but in the humility and integrity. According to Rabbi Yehuda Bar Pazi, Beit Hillel consistently practiced two remarkable things. One, they taught the views of Beit Shammai before their own. This showed deep respect and intellectual honesty. They didn't dismiss opposing views, but actually honored them by presenting them first. And then second, if they were persuaded by Beit Shammai's reasoning, they actually changed their minds. I know, it's a crazy concept. Rather than cling to ego or partisanship, they were willing to admit when the other side was right. Hillel teaches us that true leadership is not about being right, it's about being righteous, making space for others' voices and remaining open to growth. As Rabbi Tarfon said in Pirkei Avot, Ezehu Mechubad, who is honored? The one who honors others. Through teaching your opponent's words, you're taking time away from your own words. Again, this is counterintuitive. But through this act, the leader shows a quiet confidence in their own thoughts. Let the other side be heard, because I believe in my ideas so much that I'm not scared to let the other side be heard and challenge them if they need to be refuted. Moses and Aaron let the opposing voices be heard when they bowed down in silence, and perhaps it took that vacuum for the wrong message to be put out, for new leaders to step in, Joshua and Caleb. The two leaders standing apart from the other 10, they say, the land we have traversed and scouted is an exceedingly good land. If the Lord is pleased with us, God will bring us to the land, a land that flows with milk and honey, and give it to us. Only you must not rebel against the Lord. Have no fear then of the people of the country, for they are our prey. Their protection has departed from them, but the Lord is with us. Have no fear of them. These are Caleb's words. He doesn't lie. The land is exceedingly good, as the other spies reported. He doesn't lie about the opposition that they're going to face. Rather than say, we are not the prey here, we can win if we believe we can, because God believes we can. That's what he says. We are not the prey. God has faith in us. How much more so should we have faith in ourselves? Despite the social and physical threats, they spoke the truth. True anavah, humility, is not about erasing yourself. It's about knowing when to speak and when to hold silence, when to give space, when to step forward. There's a reason Moses doesn't give a speech when the people cry out to return to Egypt. That moment of silence is not passivity. It was spiritual restraint. It created space for something else, another voice to emerge. And they do. Caleb and Joshua rise up. Sometimes humility means stepping back, not forever, but so that others might step forward. And sometimes that is leadership. And sometimes humility means speaking up, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it means risking rejection, as Caleb and Joshua do. They set themselves apart. I'm sure they weren't the most popular spies in the world at that time, but they show a different kind of humility, because their very lives matter less than the future of their people. The Shtender, which I learned from and used to speak from, it still holds up my books, my words, but what it really holds up is the foundation of how I try to lead. Not by having all the answers, but by staying grounded. Not by taking up all the space, but by creating space for others to wrestle, to speak, to lead, and to shine. Now, none of us are perfect, myself included. Sometimes I speak when I shouldn't, or I'm silent when I should speak, or I doubt myself when I should act. But it's that little verse in that wood that brings me back. And Moses was the most humble person on the face of the earth. And it teaches us all that the most courageous act is not marching forward with arrogance, but standing up with anavut, with humility. Like Moses and Aaron, like Caleb and Joshua, like Hillel and Shammai. May the weight of Torah be held up by these words for anyone ready to lean in and to learn. And let us say, Amen.